All right, Jimmy, let's bring the crew up. I want to pivot myself over here. And we got Pierre Sabat joining us here in the lab this morning. What's up, Pierre?
Hey, pleasure being here.
Frankly, great to have you
What's
here.
up, Pierre? How you doing, Pierre?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Awesome. And we got Marty Johnny here and Pierre Sabat joining us from Montreal here, tech entrepreneur from Montreal. Here to get real about the personal cost of entrepreneurship. He has spent the last 8 years building his tech company, mostly out of the spotlight. I got to tell you, Pierre, I was reading some of your posts and a lot of the stuff you write, I resonate with. I was like, man, I can't wait to sit down and talk with this fellow. He's here to challenge the traditional startup narrative and share the hard lessons he's learned along the way. Oh man, I'll let Pierre get into it. Let's get into his journey. Pierre, you've talked about how following the typical startup playbook nearly cost you everything, including your marriage. What was that moment that you've been working through that you realized that the path wasn't working for Pierre Sabat?
Let's say, I don't know how much time we have, a couple of days to talk about this, but so many things to share here. We launched my co-founders and I launched the company in late 2015, beginning of 2016. That was the craze of launching a startup, raising funds, doing all of these things. And that was my goal. Like I wanted to pitch to investors, raise millions, go all in, go big, or go home and retire on a yacht with a martini. Reality kicked in just probably 9 months to a year in when we discovered that my wife is pregnant. And then we discovered she's pregnant with twins. And I didn't have a company. I had an idea on a napkin. And that's when reality kicked in. Like I was trying to raise, nobody wanted to invest in me, my co-founders, the company. And I had to make a choice. Like it's either we close shop, go back to the corporate world, which I hated when I was doing, or I had to figure it out. So I sat down with my co-founders and we're like, we have these two options. We either fire the team or we have to do something about it. Fire the team or we go back to having jobs. So we hunkered down, went into what we call cockroach mode for probably a year and a half.
Wow.
Yeah, we cut salaries, fired everybody, and we started piling up credit card debt. My wife gave birth, and my family was living off of my wife's paycheck, maternity paycheck, which was crazy. So the first year of my kids being born, I spent 183 days away from them. They had to go back home, get help with the family. They were twins. It was really hard. And I started realizing how whatever I've been taught in the startup world at the beginning was completely wrong, or at least not close to the reality of entrepreneurship. So by hunkering down, we were able to just get to a point where we broke even with the business, like ramen profitability. And from there, starting building the company step by step. And as I was building this company, everything I'm seeing online contradicts with the reality of entrepreneurship. Mm-hmm. And you read all this bullshit about raising money, go big, VC, and probably small percentage of entrepreneurs are able to do that. What about the 99.9% of entrepreneurs? And that's when I started probably sharing a bit of my journey online and giving probably the unfiltered view of how to build a startup, how to build a tech company from someone who has done it and has done all the mistakes in the book.
Johnny, I'm going to come to you because you made a comment yesterday, Johnny, about faking it till you're making it. And I'm listening to Pierre talk, and we hear all these stories about celebrating, raising, as Pierre said, raise money. You're going to create a hockey stick business and off you go. Pierre, Johnny, it's very much fake it till you make it in that world, isn't it? So, John, I know you had a comment to make, and then Pierre, I want to look back to you, but it very much is it fake it, right? Yeah, we got all this money coming in. Let's pretend we're telling a great story, but behind the scenes, we're crumbling. Johnny.
Yeah, I think that the whole idea of fake it till, and that's probably part of what Pierre's referencing in what he sees in terms of today's entrepreneurship being a little misleading, is that the saying fake it till you make it doesn't mean go buy a bunch of shit you can't afford, like cars and boats. It means do the habits, do the hard shit that the entrepreneurs that make it are doing, so that you can then in turn actually have a chance at making it. So it's really backwards. Fake it till you make it. The general public says, oh, I need to go buy a Ferrari so I can start doing videos with this. No, start getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and work on your self improvement, because you're only going to be as good as you become. And so it's the idea that fake it till you make it means you're doing all the shit and you're not getting paid yet. That's the fake part. You're doing the habits, you're doing the hard stuff. And that's the part of you're faking it. You're faking the fact that you're making all this money because you're doing all this shit. That's the fake part. Don't fake the fact you're making a lot of money and you're not doing shit to get it. That's the part that fucks people up.
Yeah. Pierre, what do you think when you hear that fake and making, because again, the glorifying of entrepreneurship is very much not real.
Absolutely. I agree with Johnny. The fact that you go into entrepreneurship, you have this idea, you want to sell it to people, you're basically faking it until you figure out how to make it. And realistically, to be very candid, even 8 years in, we're still faking it until we make it. Every step of the way, you're selling the future and you're faking the future until you get to the future, and then you step it up. This is on one side. The other side, the typical tech startup ecosystem and VC ecosystem is all built around vanity metrics, like metrics where you're chasing the next valuation round of your company, you're chasing the next funding raise that you're going to do, the next thing, the next big audacious goal. But on paper, your company might be worth $0, but the valuation is saying like it's $1 billion. So every single entrepreneur, and mainly VC-backed entrepreneurs, they're really they're faking it, and most of them don't even make it.
Jeez. So Pierre, here's the flip side though. So we shine the light on all the glory. Failure is often glorified, it seems like today, in today's hustle culture, right? Now, we here in the lab, we talk about embracing failure. We don't glorify, we talk about embracing it. You got to work for it. You got to walk towards it, right? Walk towards the failure to achieve a win. People often say, Pierre, that failure is part of success. I saw a great post from my friend Will Ray yesterday saying I failed. And in reality, yesterday, he had some great success. But Pierre, from your experience, it seems like following bad advice, especially in this path of raising money in entrepreneurship, bad advice can make failure much harder to recover from. Are we glorifying failure too much, Pierre, or is it really a necessary step on the path to ultimate success?
I think it is. I really think it is. If I didn't fail at raising money, raising VC, I probably would still be trying to raise VC. If I haven't failed at applying some of the advice that the so-called mentors were given to me that doesn't apply to my business, I probably would have been still listening to people who know nothing about my business, my industry, etc. So I had to go through all of these, painfully so, even when you don't have money, like even sometimes when you don't have hope left in the business. So I think it is glorified on one side, like it's glorified when you have a backup plan, but most entrepreneurs, at least the ones that I'm close to, they don't have backup plans, and failure is a must, and you have to just swallow the frog and keep pushing. So it's kind of a two-edged sword.
No plan B, baby. As soon as you got a plan B, plan A is compromised.
100%. Can't agree more.
And I wanted to add in too with Pierre going through everything he was going through. You can't show up to work every day, or you can't show up and people can see that you're going through something. You have to, so that's a way of faking it till you make it, like a positive way of faking it till you make it. Like y'all will never know what I'm going through on this show. So prime example there. And then another thing about like the valuation, like say somebody's net worth is 50 million. 50 million was the first number I could think of, Keith. They probably don't have 50 million in their pocket. They got stuff they're paying for. They have stuff going on, but the 50 million sounds great. So that's another way of faking it till you make it. So that type of stuff makes me feel better about whatever I'm going through. Whoever I think is up here, it's not all it's cracked up to be. If that makes sense.
That's it. Pierre, before we wrap this segment, and we're going to get into the deep dive, talking about how it almost ruined relationships and so forth, entrepreneurship. What's the one thing, Pierre, the one thing you want entrepreneurs to take away from your experience over the last 10 minutes of conversation? What would they or should an entrepreneur be doing differently based on your experience, Pierre?
Well, I think there are so many things, but the one thing that always was true to me is sticking to my gut feeling. If I look back at my journey, The biggest mistakes were when I didn't listen to my gut feeling and I listened to someone else's advice who has never been in my shoes. So when I'm writing on LinkedIn and I'm sharing with these entrepreneurs, and a lot of them message me and they're like, okay, now you made it. What can you tell me, what advice can you give me? And I tell them, like, there's no making it. Even at my, like, I'm fighting fires every single day. It's not an easy ride. It's just, I got a thicker skin now. What I say, again, just to wrap this up, follow your gut feeling if you're hesitating, because your gut feeling knows better than any expert advice out there.
Yeah, the power of the gut. Isn't that true?